Hello, my name's Simonize and welcome to another Simonize video. We're taking a scenic flight across Azeroth in this video while I explain my strong feelings about parsing in World of Warcraft and why I think it's a problem. Also, I'll explain what parsing is in case you don't know. This video is a little different than my normal guide content, so if you like this video, please go down below and leave a like, a comment, or subscription to the channel. It will help me know if you guys want more content like this in the future where I talk about the game in a more general way. Without further ado, let's start with answering what is a parse. A parse is a score from 1 to 100 assigned to your individual performance on a boss by the website Warcraft Logs. It is a ranking comparing your performance against the performance of all other players of the same class and talent specialization for that boss. A 99th percentile score means you performed better than 99% of other players that you're being compared to. There are some immediate implications for this. Since a parse is a measure of how you compare to others, if you do the same DPS one week as the next, and the average player does slightly more DPS the next week, as is often the case, your parse will be lower even though you did the same DPS. If other players are using specific talent specializations or entire raid strategies designed around maximizing their parses, and you and your raid are not, you'll be at a disadvantage and parse lower using normal talents or strategies. Parses usually impact players playing World of Warcraft by some groups requiring players joining the group to have parses above a certain level. They do this to filter out players they don't think will contribute much to the success of the team. As you'll see from this video, that system isn't perfect, but no doubt it's better than doing the same thing with gear score. The first problem, and I think the main problem, is that strategies optimal for scoring a high parse often differ from strategies optimal for raid success, actually killing the boss. Warcraft Logs has their own set of rules for what counts and what does not count for damage output on each boss. I believe Warcraft Logs tries to align their parse rules with raid optimal strategies as much as they can, but parse-oriented players will always plan strategies strictly around the parse rules, which often diverge from raid optimal strategies. In Vanilla and Burning Crusade, many bosses had very few mechanics, and this meant that usually the optimal parse strategy was the same as the optimal raid success strategy. With significantly more complicated bosses in Wrath of the Lich King, we see a greater divergence between parsing strategies and raid success strategies. For example, the swarms of dozens of small cats summoned on Oriaya do not count for your damage parse on that boss according to Warcraft Logs parsing rules. A player trying to score a high parse would not press their AoE ability to quickly dispatch them, whereas a player trying to maximize the success of their raid would see a clear opportunity for effective use of AoE, killing those cats quickly and minimizing the damage the cats deal to the raid. Another example of the conflict between optimal parsing and optimal raid execution can be seen on the most difficult version of Yogg-saron, what is known as Zero Lights. In this version of the encounter, the immortal guardians in the third phase are actually immortal and cannot die. Early on, it is good and useful to deal damage to them because when they have lower health, they deal less damage to your tank. Eventually, your raid will have too many guardians alive and begin kiting them and attempt to burn the boss down quickly. At this point, dealing more damage to the guardians is not helping your raid succeed at all. Under Warcraft Logs rules, all damage dealt to the immortal guardians counts towards your parse. A player looking to help their raid have the best chance of killing the boss will ignore the guardians once they start being kited and focus on the boss. A parse chasing player will see the juicy AoE opportunity and spam Fan of Knives, Seed of Corruption, or whatever AoE spell they have on the huge pack of immortal guardians, which means they deal little or no damage to the boss, but maximize their parse. Even down to the individual player, you can find examples of ability usage that differs between someone trying to be the most valuable they can be to their team and someone trying to score high on Warcraft Logs. The rogue ability Tricks of the Trade is a good example. It costs 15 energy and buffs another player's damage by 15% for 6 seconds. This is easily one of the most efficient ways a rogue can convert energy to damage, and a good rogue playing to maximize the team's performance will press this almost every time it's available. However, under Warcraft Logs rules, the damage increase from Tricks of the Trade is not attributed to the rogue who cast it or to the player who receives it. It's factored out. A parse-oriented player will forego this exceptionally efficient way to increase raid damage because it spends 15 energy on something that does not increase their own parse. Instead, they can spend that 15 energy on an ability that contributes less overall to the raid, but improves their individual parse. Many defensive abilities are met with, "That's what healers are for," and not used by parse-oriented players if the defensive costs them any amount of damage output. A player who recognizes they are part of a team will make efficient use of defensives to reduce total raid damage taken, which allows the healers to devote their attention elsewhere, or even just bring less healers to the raid. I could go on and on with examples of parse-oriented strategies that differ from raid success-oriented strategies, but I think you guys get the idea. As fights become more complex, the optimal parse strategies and the optimal raid success strategies diverge. The way I see it, you have a divide in the community with two types of players. You have some players who are interested in optimizing their individual score according to rules set by Warcraft logs, and you have other players focused on being an effective member of a team. The second big problem with parses is that they are an individual score assigned to something that is highly influenced by external factors outside of the control of the individual. The biggest external factor here is kill time for bosses. This has a big influence because every class has some form of damage boosting cooldown that only lasts a short time. A faster kill means each player spends a larger percentage of time with powerful buffs like heroism or metamorphosis or adrenaline rush active, which has a pretty substantial impact on their overall damage per second. What this means is you can have a good player who makes all their own decisions optimally for damage output, but they're stuck in a raid group with people who are not performing as well or not really investing in optimizing their characters. The slow kill times of the raid have a significant negative impact on the good player's parse ranking, while having little or nothing to do with the skill of the player. Similarly, you can have a fairly mediocre player who does most things right, but isn't really optimizing their damage output very well in a very strong performance group. This player is likely to score even better parses than the good player in the bad raid, just because they have faster boss kill times. For example, maybe the player in the fast kill time group spends about 40% of the fight with heroism active, whereas the player in the slow kill time group spends only 30% of the fight with heroism active. The problem with assigning an individual score to something that is a team effort is that the individual score isn't really measuring the individual's performance. It's measuring the individual's performance combined with the performance of the team they are participating in. This makes it a bad tool to evaluate the individual because it's not clear how much of that is due to the individual and how much is due to the team they are playing with. Okay, so what's the big deal? So what if some players want to plan their entire raids around a rule set invented by Warcraft logs? So what if parse rankings are not a good measure of individual player performance? Ultimately, I think this both is and isn't a problem. One of the great things about World of Warcraft is there are so many different ways to enjoy the game. One of the most difficult parts about World of Warcraft is finding a group of like-minded individuals who like to enjoy the game the same way you do. There's nothing wrong with some people getting together who like to hyper-optimize their raid strategies around Warcraft logs rule set for parsing and pursuing that goal. There are also plenty of high-performance teams who are smart enough to recognize that a player's parses don't tell the full story of whether they are a good player or not. I think a large part of the community both overemphasizes the importance of parses and at the same time doesn't really understand what a parse number means or represents. I think a player's parses are far too often interpreted as a measure of that player's skill, when much more than the individual player's skill factors into their parses. The overemphasis on parses often comes up in parse requirements for joining groups. This is similar to gear score requirements, where group leaders want an easy way to filter out people who might not contribute much to the group's success. For this filtering function, it isn't important that parses are a perfect measure of someone's skill, just that they are the best available method. Until something better comes along, we're stuck with parse rankings being the easiest way to evaluate a player. To me, it is a sad state of the game that parses are so heavily emphasized by much of the player base, especially now in Wrath of the Lich King, with such a divergence between parse optimal strategies compared to raid success optimal strategies. It feels like there are two different games being played. I hope that from watching this video, you've gained some understanding about what a parse ranking is and what it actually represents. I think you'll enjoy World of Warcraft a lot more not caring about parses than trying to chase convoluted strategies based around Warcraft logs made up rule sets. Thanks for watching the Simonize Show. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Can't wait for more sweet videos? Links are on screen that you can watch right now. Be sure to join the Discord server and pop by on Twitch to catch me live. Links to both are in the video description. Thank you for watching and have a great day.